one of the things that gives me hope is looking at the disarray of clown world. In the
Mm.
long run, in the long run, stupidity never works. And
Mhm.
at some point, people are going to be brought up short with the reality of stupidity doesn't work. When
Mhm.
when 3 or 4 or 5 blue states go bankrupt, you know, always, like Margaret Thatcher once said, the problem with socialism is that sooner or later you run out of other people's money, and
Mhm.
and then all the bills come due, and people and you hit the wall, and someone's
Mhm.
going to say, uh, someone made a joke about the mess in Israel. I saw a joke on Twitter where someone said, I just I just saw an army recruiting ad that featured a white heterosexual male. I guess we are going to
Mm.
war.
Saw that. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so in other words, if your recruiting ads are featuring black woke lesbians to get people to
Mhm.
join the army, the lesson that I would draw from that is that this is a country that is currently facing no threats whatever. Okay, at some point it it gets serious. At some point, you don't have the luxury of all the social engineering experimentation. So,
Mhm.
um, I was in the Navy and served in the submarine service, and since I got out, some genius decided to start putting women on submarines, which
Yeah.
is about the dumbest idea ever, and
Yeah.
and second only to putting women on surface ships. Yeah, just but the only
Mhm.
reason that works is that we're not at war. Um,
Right.
it's right. As soon as an existential threat arises, all of a sudden these um, um, what niche experiments are going to be far too costly. And so what I see happening is the collapse of the secular ideal, and in certain sectors, well, this has happened at least a couple times in history. When Constantine made opened up made Christianity legal, and then Theodosius made it the religion of the empire. The reason the reason Constantine did that, and I'm not questioning whether he was sincere in his Christian faith or not, but there were political pressures on him to do
Mhm.
this, and the political pressure was that Rome was falling apart. Okay, and as an emperor of this big shambling giant, um, he looked at the Christian church, which had which was a universal small c Catholic church, bishops from all over the world meeting in concert to discuss things. They had something that Rome did not have, and
Mhm.
what happened was Rome essentially gave up and handed the keys to the Christians. Now, and I think the same thing happened in the Puritan Revolution in England, where the Puritans took over for a while because the previous regime just sort of ran out of gas. They just um, couldn't do it. I think we're headed for a similar moment. I believe
Mm.
that because it's a global thing, there will be parts of the globe that where the secularists don't run out of gas. They can keep going for a while, but there will be places where they say we give up, um, and Christians are going to be in a position if they've thought through these things, if they've read up on it, if they've read
Mhm.
Wolf, and if they've read my Mere Christendom book, and
Mhm.
they're engaged with these things, they're going to be perhaps more ready for prime time than we've been in some of the previous eras when we 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 found ourselves running the show before we were quite ready.
Mhm. So this leads to Mere Christendom, which I took as sort of a rallying cry for a reinvigorated Christian spirit against the sort of secularist pagan energy of our age? Like, how can we reinvigorate the masculine Christian spirit active to get out into the world and to take dominion?
Yes, very much
Mhm.
so. And it begins with recognizing that secularism is bankrupt.
Mhm.
Secularism cannot give an account of itself.
Why do you think there are so many Christians that are still holding on to this notion of what seems to be a secular, a neutral space? I saw your response video to Owen Strachan, and I found it striking that he would suggest that there's still some neutral space out there. Are we not clear
Yeah.
that doesn't exist?
Yeah. So when Owen says things like "I believe in democracy," and then a few days later, a Democratic referendum in Ohio puts
Correct.
abortion into the Constitution of Ohio. So is that
Mhm.
I don't believe in democracy. I believe in righteousness. Democracy is a
Mhm.
mechanism. A republic is a mechanism. A monarchy, a constitutional monarchy is a mechanism. The standards of righteousness are not to be found in any mechanism. You can have a tyrannical king, you can have a just king. You can have a just society voting in just laws, or a rogue society voting in an unjust law. Um,
Mhm.
so the idea that now going back to your question, the reason I think Christians are still somewhat enamored of secularism is that in this pretended neutral world, there's a pretense. The secularists have told us, well, there's a realm of neutrality, and Christians said, oh, okay, and then we go into the realm of neutrality, and when Christians operate in the realm of neutrality, because they're Christians, they obey the rules.
Mhm.
Okay, they they say, okay, we agreed to be neutral, so we'll keep Christianity out of it.
I get it.
We'll run on this. We'll be in the school board, and we'll be involved in the PTA and all of this stuff, and we'll keep our Christianity out of it. And
Mhm.
the secularists agreed to keep their paganism out of it, but they break their word. Okay,
Yep.
so we've been showing up at the soup kitchen, right? Um, and we don't, and we keep bringing our ingredients, and they bring their ingredients, and we agree that it's all neutral, right? But they've been lacing the food with cocaine, and they've been doing it for decades, and they cheat, right? Well, the Christians don't
Mhm.
cheat. The Christians said, well, if you let Christians have a secular space, Christians could run a secular space, and we'd keep it decent. Yeah, because
Mhm.
that would be because you're just doing all your Christianity stuff off budget. You you're still
Right.
doing it, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so that's why I think Christians think that secularism could work, because if people like Owen ran the quote unquote secularism, you'd the pretense could be kept up for a while. But it's not
Got
people
it.
like Owen. It's not people like Owen. It's people who hate God.
Mhm. It's a little bit like Lucy and Linus with the football, right? You got the Linus going to kick, and Lucy just pulls it away every time. Like it's like no, there never was any neutrality. Well, maybe there was for a time. Hard to say, but certainly now there's not.
I
Certainly
would
now
only
there's a
I would
go
only
ahead.
differ with you by saying it's not a little like Lucy in the football. It's exactly like Lucy in the football.
Yeah, exactly. So, so what do you think it will take, or what would you like for it to take for Christians to recognize that this is what's going on, and for Christians to begin showing up in force in all the ways of their life that are meaningful? It may not necessarily be political engagement in terms of the civil magistrate. It may be in their workplace. It may be in their families. It may be in their communities. It doesn't necessarily have to be everyone as a single focused effort towards one specific aim.
Yeah.
What sort of things would be necessary to invigorate Christian men and women and families to begin that dominion taking process throughout the country in the ways that they feel called?
Yeah. Everything begins at home. It
Mhm.
begins in the area. I'm not required to begin by changing or fixing the things I can't reach.
Mhm.
I need to begin where I can reach. I need to get my family to worship God on a weekly basis. I have to bring up my children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. I have to gather together with like-minded Christians where I live, and I need to have loyalty to the larger project. And if you're a Christian leader, a pastor, a blogger, some sort of one of those guys, the way to start, the place to start, is by avoiding and resisting the temptation to give way to turf wars. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the last thing in the world we need is for secularism to start falling apart and for the Christians to start fighting each other.
Yeah.
Okay. So I used to, years ago, and I think that's probably the gravest temptation I think we are facing right now, is strife between Christians.
Yeah.
In the day when secularism is disintegrating. Years ago, I said, I defined an evangelical in North America, and this is a very broad definition, but an evangelical in North America is someone who likes Billy Graham. And a reformed Christian in North America was someone who liked R.C. Sproul. And I wondered at the time what was going to happen when both those men went to be with the Lord. When there's no longer that rallying point or that point of identification. And I'm afraid that too many Christian leaders in the evangelical world and then also in the Reformed world lined up to be the replacement. Okay, who's gonna carry the mantle? Who's gonna take the man? Who's gonna be the Elisha to that Elijah? And then when it turned out that more than one person thought of himself that way, strife began between them. And so I think Christian leaders ought to remember what the Lord Jesus did with the disciples when a dispute arose among them as to who was going to be the greatest. Don't think like that. Don't think like that. Don't think like that.
Right. I'm so glad that you said that, because I think the challenges that we face as Christians and also as men mean that different men will be called forth to lead in different ways. And there is not one central single figure outside of Christ, but here on earth right now, we all are called in different ways to lead, and no one has to be called the greatest to lead.
Right.
That's
there's no
big part. Go ahead.
There's no one correct way of doing it. The army does not need ships, right? But so my dad wrote a book called Principles of War, applying military principles of war to spiritual warfare, and one of them was cooperate. One of the principles is cooperation, and it's great for West Point and Annapolis to have the annual Army-Navy game. It's great to have that kind of competitiveness on the football field. But when a war starts, you don't want that competitiveness to carry over. You want the Navy and the Army to be coordinated and thinking of themselves as on the same side.